Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another vlog post. Today, I am going to be talking about my all time favorite movie, Field of Dreams. I love this movie on so many levels. I'm not a fan of Kevin Costner personally, but I think he's a really good actor. This is my favorite movie that's got him in it. It's got James Earl Jones, it's got so many other well known actors. It's just such a great movie. Like I said, I love every aspect of this movie. Of course, there's the baseball mixed in there, but it's not. Baseball's kind of like a background thing to the story here. If you haven't seen this movie, spoiler alert, I'm going to talk about it a little bit. Shame on you. You should definitely watch this movie, even if you're not a baseball fan. This is a good family movie. Like I said, baseball is kind of a background to the main part of the story. It just kind of sets up where everything is going. So let me talk about this movie a little bit. I will be doing a series of videos about movies that I like and TV shows that I like. I'm big on science fiction and horror, so I'm definitely going to be covering that. But I wanted to start with my all-time favorite. So the movie came out back in 1989. I was 13 years old, and I was kind of having a rough patch at that time. I was going through some things. So it's always been a very emotional movie for me. I'm not going to lie to you, I do not cry very much in life, but you can guarantee every time I watch this movie, at the end, I will be in tears. Maybe not like waterworks tears, but I'll be tearing up. So um, at that point in my life, my dad had just moved down to Texas right about that time, 1989. My grandfather, I was there with him. He was about the closest thing to a dad figure I had. I had my stepdad, but we weren't that super close at that time. Um, so when I first saw this movie, it just spoke to me on an emotional level. I might keep repeating that, but that's basically just what it is. It's just a very touching movie to me. So the movie's about this guy that he had an argument with his dad. He left home. He meets this girl in college who's from Iowa. I don't remember where he was from. So he ends up wanting to be close to her. They get married. They move to Iowa, and he becomes a farmer. He doesn't know what the heck he's doing, and he's out in the field one day and he hears a voice that says, "If you build it, he will come." So of course he thinks he's nuts. He doesn't know what's going on. But as time goes on, these other things start to happen, and he gets it in his head that he's got to build a baseball field out in the cornfields of Iowa. So he plows under all his crop and he starts building this baseball field. So of course everybody, wife included, thinks he's nuts, because when you're a farmer, you obviously have to have your crops to survive. Farmers have a very hard life in this world. Anyway, he goes through with it, and, nothing really happens. So then he gets another voice, another thing leads him down the road of his favorite author from the 1960s, Terrence Mann, who was played by the great James Earl Jones. So he decides that he has to go find James Earl Jones. I'm sorry, Terrence Mann, his character. So he drives up to Boston. He finds him. Now, Terrence Mann, the character played by James Earl Jones, has kind of been a big recluse since the 1960s. He was part of a lot of the big social movements of the time. But as he got older, he just kind of wanted to get away from the world. He had enough, and I can definitely understand how that feels because eventually I'd like to go out to Wyoming and kind of just live on my own in peace out there. So I can definitely understand where the motivation of that character is coming from. Anyway, he finds him. They kind of not have a fight, but they have this discussion, and eventually he convinces him that he has to join him on this quest that he's on. Okay. So they end up going to Fenway Park in Boston, which is the home of the Boston Red Sox. They go to see a game, and everything is normal. And then all of a sudden, in like the seventh inning or whatever, Kevin Costner's character sees something up on the scoreboard. He hears something, and they see he sees something that says Archibald Moonlight Graham, one game played, one inning played, whatever. So he gets it in his head that he has to now research who the heck this Archibald Graham was, right? And James Earl Jones claims he didn't see anything. So, he's like, "I'm sorry, I wasted your time. Let me take you home." So he takes him back to wherever, I don't remember. I don't remember if he was also in Boston. Whatever. He takes him back home. He drops him off, And as he turns the van around, James Earl Jones stops and gets in front of him, and he says, "Archibald Moonlight Graham," and he's like, "You saw it, you saw it." He's like, "I saw what?" So they kind of banter back and forth about that. So, this is before the internet exploded, before Google, before we had our instant gratification on our cell phones. So, they go to either the library or the local, what's the word I'm looking for? A means to research, historical office. I don't know what, I'm drawing a blank at the moment, but they go to research this Archibald Graham. And I'm not sure, I think it was down in Georgia. I've seen this movie so many times, you think I would know this, but of course I just don't remember it. So they decide that they have to go to this town and research this character. All right, so they go down there on the road. Oh, tongue twisted. Sorry, guys. On the way, they see this young kid hitchhiking on the side of the road. So they're like, well, let's stop and see what he says. They pick him up, and his name is, surprise, surprise, Archibald Graham. And he's talking about how he's a ball player and he wants to find these little minor league teams that get you a job in the daytime, let you play ball at night, which is kind of a very old custom. I mean, that was back in like the 1900s, the early 1900s to like 1920s, 30s. So now it's the three of them on this insane quest. Well, in the meantime, back home in Iowa, because he had plowed over his crop and turned it into a baseball field, he's losing money. They're about to be foreclosed. So his wife's brother either worked at the bank or something. Like he's doing what he can to stop the foreclosure, but at the same time, he's kind of a dick in the movie. So it's like he's pushing for it at the same time. Anyway, so they get to this town and they're researching it, and they come to find out that Archibald Graham, the character, that this young guy is, he had one at bat in the major leagues. He was brought up as a rookie. He had been with the team a couple of weeks, but he never had any gameplay. Well, then they put him in to have one at bat. He flew out, and that was it. And he knew that he would go back to the minor leagues the next season. He didn't want to do that. He wanted to, he wanted to play or he was done. So he ends up retiring, and he goes on to become a doctor. So, all this is going on. They're talking about it, and Kevin Costner's character is like, you know what? He's having a difficult time processing. He's like, I got to go take a walk. So he goes out for a walk, and next thing you know, it's 1972. Like, he looks up at the marquee for the movie theater, and it's like The Godfather, the movie of the year. Or he looks at a license plate, and it says 1972. And he sees an old man walking down the street. And now I skipped one part. When they were doing research about Dr. Graham, Archibald Graham, they talked to a lot of people from this town, a lot of old timers that knew him before he passed away, that he always had his cane with him, or umbrella. I'm sorry, he always had his umbrella. So he sees this old guy with the umbrella walking, and he runs up to him and he calls out to him. He's like, "Are you Archibald Moonlight Graham?" And it's played by Burt Lancaster, another awesome actor from back in the day that's passed away. And he says, nobody has called me that name in 50 years. So they go back to his office. They have this conversation, and he tells him, he doesn't let on too much, but he's asking him about his one time in the major leagues, and Burt Lancaster's telling him about it, and he kind of talks about how, if there was a place that was magical, if you come with us, that I could get you there and you could have more than that one at bat, would you do it? And he says, I kind of believe you, even though you sound a little crazy. He's like, but, had I had that bat, I would have not become a doctor. And think of how many lives I've saved. Think of how much more important that's been than chasing this dream of being a ball player. So he's like, I'm sorry, I have to pass. I got to get back home to my wife. So anyway, the three of them kind of get a little disheveled. They go back home to Iowa. So, it's him, Terrence Mann, the character played by James Earl Jones, and the young version of Archie Graham, And when they get back there, there's baseball players there. Now, unfortunately, he can see him, his wife can see him, the daughter can see him, and James Earl Jones' character, but nobody else, okay? So there's Ray Liotta was playing Shoeless Joe Jackson, who was a member of the 1918 White Sox, if you know about that scandal, if you know anything about baseball history, there's all these other legends, Gil Hodges, Mel Ott, all these like old school famous baseball players, and they're all playing there. So what it's basically trying to say is that this is like heaven, sort of. These guys are in heaven because these are the guys that they were part of this, and this part's real life. Like I was just talking about the 1918, I think it was 1918, White Sox scandal, where I think it was about 12 of them or so, however many it was. They purposely threw certain games so they would lose the World Series. They hated the owner; he was like a cheapskate or whatever it was. Well, it was discovered that they threw the World Series, so they were banned for life. Banned for life. Could never be a part of baseball. Could never be in the Hall of Fame. Stuff like that. Okay, so they died with that on their conscience, I guess. So this is like their heaven. They're getting to play. So they call Archibald Graham. He's like, hey, come here, rookie. Come here and play. So he actually gets to play. So, he smiles and winks at Kevin Costner and everybody's all happy. Well, then the next day, here comes the bank and the brother-in-law that they're going to foreclose, And they're like, what the hell are you doing? You plowed under your field. You're sitting here looking at an empty, because nobody else can see him. Nobody else has it in their heart, I guess, to see him, And he's like, leave it, man. This is perfect. Everybody's playing. Don't worry. Well, anyway, the bank wants to foreclose. They get into this big argument. And the daughter, who had been sitting on the bleachers there with James Earl Jones, had been eating a hot dog. She falls off the bleachers. She starts to choke. So, they're getting ready to call 911. And Kevin Costner's like, wait a minute. And the wife is like, what do you mean, wait a minute? You're friggin' nuts. What are you talking about? Well, Archibald Graham, the young kid, sorry, sorry. I apologize. I'm starting to get a little emotional here. Archibald Graham, the young kid, sees that, and he runs to the edge of the field. Because you see, the players, the ghosts or spirits or angels, whatever the hell you want to call them, they can't leave the field. They're confined within the foul lines of the field. If they leave, that's it. They can never go back. So, I'm sorry, here I go getting emotional again. He steps off the field, and he turns into the old Doc Graham that Kevin Costner's character ran into in 1972. Well, now all of a sudden the brother is standing there and he's like, what the beep? Now all of a sudden he can see it, So the doc goes over, he saves the daughter's life. She was choking on the hot dog from falling off the bleachers, whatever. But then Kevin Costner realizes, like, oh my God, you can't go back. You can't go back. He's like, Doc, I'm so sorry. He's like, it's all right, son. It's all right, And, sorry. I apologize, guys. I'm all right. For those of you who know me, I have a reputation of being very cold and hard around the edges. Trust me, I'm not. I am a very emotional person. I just don't let my emotions control me. I don't make my decisions based on feeling and emotions. I base them on fact and logic. And okay. Anyway, I told you this movie makes me emotional. So the doc saves the kid. He can't ever go back. But he got to play his one game. So Kevin Costner's like, thank you. He's like, no, son, thank you. He walks, he greets all the players, and then he walks into the outfield, and then he disappears, which presumably he goes into heaven. So, now the jack-off brother-in-law is like, where'd all these baseball players come from? You can't sell this farm. You can't, So he now he wants to stop the foreclosure, right? So the guys are getting ready to leave for the day. They're like, the baseball players, they're like, I think we had enough for a day. We're going to go home. And they say, do you want to come with us? Now, Kevin Costner assumes that he's talking about him. And he's like, no, we're not talking about you. We're talking about you. And they point to Terrence Mann, the character played by James Earl Jones. Because it turns out that he had written something about his love of baseball. Even though he had denied it earlier in the film, he had written this whole piece about how he used to go to the ballpark. I think it was with his dad or something like that. And just, and he gives this awesome, awesome speech about just baseball and America in general. Sorry, Sorry, I don't mean to tear up on you here. He just he gives a speech just about how America. Oh God, I'm sorry. Oh, this is very unusual for me. I don't usually get this emotional, but I told you this damn movie gets me every single time. And he talks about how America, is like a steamroller. It's been destroyed, rebuilt time and time again, but baseball has been the constant. Baseball has been the thing that defines us. God damn it. Sorry. Anyway, so Kevin Costner kind of throws a fit, and he's like, "Whoa, whoa, hold on. Why are you taking him? I built the damn field. I got rid of my crops. He's like, I've done everything you've asked. I've gone all over the place, found all these people, and coordinated all this stuff. He's like, you're in my you're in my corn." And so Ray Liotta's character, Shoeless Joe Jackson, he's like, "I don't think you should go, Ray. I think you should stay." So James Earl Jones, goes out there with him, and all the guys except for Shoeless Joe walk into the outfield. James Earl Jones presumably goes into heaven, whatever, and he's talking about how he's going to write one more story. He hasn't written anything since the '60s. So the wife and daughter go sit, back in the house, or go sit up on the porch or whatever, and he's kind of Kevin Costner's character. I'm sorry, guys. This movie gets me every time. Kevin Costner's character is out there with Ray Liotta's character, Shoeless Joe Jackson. And he's like, if you build it, he will come. So he turns around, and there's his dad. He had this very strained relationship with his dad. He had he had left when he was 18, said something really, you know how it is when you're that young and you have arguments with people. And whatever, the dad passed away and never got to meet the daughter or whatever. Golly, listen to me. I'm like a I'm like a wilting tree here. What the hell? Anyway, so, he goes and he just kind of, talks to him, and he starts, reconciling with him a little bit. And the dad asks him if this is heaven. He's like, no, it's Iowa. He's like, oh, I thought it was heaven. Oh my God, this is embarrassing. I'm sorry, guys. I promise you, this is this is probably the only video you're gonna see me make such a mess and tear up here. It's just that this movie is that amazing. I mean, you can tell how. God, those of you who know me, you're going to be very surprised because I'm usually not this emotional about anything. I'm very stoic. Like I said, on the inside, I'm a ball of emotions. I just control them really well. I usually don't let them control me. Normally, So anyway, I don't know what that is. If you guys hear that in the video, see how the computer keeps. I apologize. All right. So, the dad's getting ready to leave, and he asks, Kevin Costner calls his wife over, introduces him, to his granddaughter, and he tells him, this is your grand. Oh my God! I'm sorry, guys. This is embarrassing. I'm like way too emotional talking about this. I shouldn't be such a mess. I'm fine. Rebecca was asking why I clinged around there. So he introduces him to the grandfather, and he's about to introduce him as his dad, but he stops, like something, he hesitates. So. The mom and the daughter, they go back, sit on the porch. And as the dad's getting ready to go, oh, this friggin' movie. Oh my God. This movie is something else. He asks him if he wants to have a catch. Oh, what a wreck. I hope this doesn't ruin whatever image you guys have of me. Oh, man. It's dude, I've seen this movie so many times since 1989, and it is literally every freaking time I think about it, I talk about it. This is guaranteed to happen, so I apologize. I hope it's not upsetting for you guys or boring or whatever. I'm not trying to be a bad host here. So, he has the catch with his dad, and then he says, then he comes to realize, no, this is heaven. It's funny because now my dad's still around. My dad and I, we've kind of had what's a good word? Strained relationship over the years. There've been really good times and there've been really bad times. But there's it's not for lack of trying on either of our part. It's just a culture clash. My dad, he was born in Italy. He grew up in Argentina. He grew up in a much tougher situation. I mean, he had a sister and a couple of brothers, but I know he grew up in a much harder situation than I did. Look, my life was not, is not, and probably never will be an easy thing, but I know he had it rough too. So, being that culture clash, we never went out in the backyard and had a catch like Kevin Costner has with his dad's character in this movie. And I think that's the part that makes me more of a mess than anything. Um, so that's it. I apologize for the waterworks, but I figured since I'm going to be doing a series about movies and TV shows, my all-time favorites, especially science fiction and horror. This is a little more on the fantasy side. I don't quite know what you would call it, but I figured let me start with this. This is my all-time favorite movie. Get it out the way. Get the waterworks out of the way, because I'm not going to be really crying about other movies. But as you can tell, this movie is still really emotional for me. I think it had a lot to do with what I was going through at the time. My dad moving away, I really didn't get to see him very often until many years later that I would see him again on a consistent basis. Again, not that he wanted to leave. He went for work, and a couple of weeks turned into a couple of months, turned into a couple of years, and the rest is history. As you'll often find in life, at least in my case, and in a lot of people's cases, not everybody, that life doesn't always follow the path you want. It will push you down a path that you don't want, you're not prepared for. Things happen. Basically, nothing in the world is free. Nothing is perfect, especially not anything having to do with my life. And there's a lot of things that happen that we can't control. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. We'll get into that in other videos. I don't know what that beeping from that other computer is. I'm sorry, guys. It does that crap all night and wakes me up. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video talking about my all-time favorite movie, Field of Dreams. If you have not seen it, for crying out loud, people, go see it. Okay? If you're like that cold, dead of heart that you don't have any emotion for it, fine. But at least you gave it a shot. Highly recommended. Like I said, I'm a big fan of James Earl Jones and Kevin Costner, their movies. I'm not a fan of Kevin Costner personally, but like I said, I like his movies. I like the ones that people hated. Postman, Waterworld. I loved him in Untouchables. That's another great movie. Maybe I'll talk about that someday. But I just wanted to thank you guys for sitting through this video. Again, I apologize I got so emotional on this one, but it's been like this since 1989. Every time I watch this movie, every time I think about this movie, every time I talk about this movie, it just gets me right here in the cold, dead heart. So I do apologize if that's disturbing for you guys or hard to watch. But I thank you for sticking with me, and I will see you in the next video.